I'm Claudine Wong, joining you from KTVU in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm joined now by Arun Konasamy, who is with CollegeWise, a nationwide college counseling service that has been very busy these days. And we're talking about those, I was going to say high school seniors, but a lot of them are high school graduates right now who are still preparing for college and still so many unknowns. How many questions are you just continuing to try to field when we really don't have any answers, or as many as answers? We have some.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, seriously, if I had a quarter for every question that I got about, is it going to open? Do you think they'll start online? I mean, I would definitely be a Jeff Bezos like billionaire at this
Yes.
point.
Let's talk about kind of some of the nitty gritty. I mean, CSU, the CSU system came out saying, we're going to be online in the fall. Digging deeper, there are some exceptions to that. Individual campuses, because there are
Right.
almost 24 of them, can make individual decisions. The interesting thing was they did it after people had to commit, right? So after that deadline to say, do you want to come to our school or not? And there was a lot of talk about whether or not people would change their mind, try to go to a different school because of that announcement. Are we seeing any of that happen? I saw some new numbers that really didn't see a major impact. I mean, are kids just trying to figure out how to deal with that? Or are we thinking there's going to be a major shift?
Right. Well, I think with the Cal State specifically, we're seeing, the conversations I'm having both with students as well as counselors who work with students going to, who have committed to the Cal States is the decision tends to be less about, shall I go from this Cal State to another option? Because many of them have chosen that Cal State for very specific reasons. It has a program that they want, the price is right, the location is perfect. So the decision making for the Cal States tends to be a little bit more focused on, is it going to be online or can I do stuff in person? And I think, some of them, a few of the Cal States came out before the May 1st deadline and said we'll be online, but the vast majority, like you said, the decision was made
Mm-hmm.
after. So I think there are some kids wrestling with that, and there are pros and cons, and I think it comes down to every individual kid situation. In general, I'm going to encourage kids, get into that flow of college. Yes, it's not ideal, but don't delay graduating, get yourself into a great employment situation as soon as possible. But yeah, with the Cal State kids, it's less about different colleges and more about, is this the right time to start? And is this the right platform going
So
online?
should they defer? Should they wait and just maybe take a couple of community college classes first and
Right.
then reapply? The danger of reapplying for those who are deferring, and this goes for everyone, CSU and beyond, is the crunch on next year's application process. I mean, is your advice, don't jump into that larger pool? You might not get back in.
Well, and this is one of those great unknowns. I mean, in addition to just, we don't know what the surge might look like in
Mm-hmm.
next year's, applicant pools. Because at the same time, if there is a surge, I can also envision a world in which colleges accommodate more students. They figure out ways, okay, we'll increase our class size a little bit. We'll, create more dorm space, things of that sort. I think my bigger concern, particularly in the state of California, is how our budgets are going to be impacted. And a lot of these cuts are going to come through education. And if there's no other money available, from the state, that's going to fall to students, so I don't know where tuition might go. I don't know where aid packages might
Yep.
head. So if a kid can kind of afford it now, start getting those credits now in a 4-year school,
Take
there
advantage
are
of it when
great
you can.
reasons to consider our 2-year community colleges here in California. But if you can do the 4-year, generally speaking, I'm going to encourage kids. All the data shows us, starting off at a 4-year increases the likelihood of you graduating from a 4-year.
And that's the goal. So yes,
Yes.
so CSU made that announcement saying we'll likely be online with some exceptions in individual campuses. UCs seem like they're going to make the attempt, right, to get everyone onto campus. But obviously that, the attempt is not the the sure
Right.
thing.
Yeah, and this is again one of those crystal ball questions, and it could be individual, UC campuses take a different look. UCLA could look very different than like Santa Cruz or Davis, right, or Merced, for that matter.
Just
Come
by the,
August,
yeah, where they're located, what the cases look like in those areas.
the density and where the students coming from, and a school like UCLA has a large percentage of students coming internationally, so that can affect the flow of students coming in. Merced a little bit less so, but I think right now plan A is to start on campus, but all of them have left that little kind of caveat, that little door open to, it's based on the what the health officials and local communities and the state say. So we could see that entirely change up. So I think they've got their plan A, they've got their plan B, which will of course be online, and there's probably some plan C's and D's
Yes.
that are being worked upon.
And Y and Z, yes. In terms of that's mostly our state schools and our UC system in California. What about the students that you are talking about out of state or at private colleges? Because I think some of those have been a little bit different as well. I mean, in California, we're very used to a very large system. Both the CSU and the UC systems are huge. But if you go to another state, they may have their one university and their one state school of the, we go to University of Oregon and Oregon State, or you have a private college that, maybe it's USC, maybe it's, Harvard, that
Right.
different options. Are you feeling like those students are in better or worse shape in those situations?
I think in some cases, on the face of it, it looks like they're in better shape. I think psychologically, there are some schools that have come out and just very clearly stated, we will be back on campus this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's put certain students at ease. We've heard that language with Purdue University. We've heard that language from University of Oklahoma, for example, and some privates out there, like, we are going to do this. But of course, if they start looking at the data of if there's a secondary surge in late summer, they may have to unwind that.
Yeah.
Even those schools that are being really bold and declarative, they definitely have a plan B coming to place. We've also seen a number of schools, Notre Dame, for example, has come out. We're going to start really early in August and we're going to wrap up before Thanksgiving to avoid a possible surge in, November, December. I don't know what that means for a January start, how they're going to escape things, but they're all keen on getting the students to be part of their student body, their class, right, as soon as possible. And so we're seeing lots of innovation, more innovation, frankly, in the last few months than I've seen in decades for most colleges and universities.
And I imagine they're all watching each other to see what works and what sounds good and what they want to take advantage of. Do you think the smaller schools, those students who have chosen smaller schools, are also feeling better about that? It is easier to create a plan for 5,000 kids or 8,000, I think, at Notre Dame is around.
These small liberal arts colleges are the most innovative ones out there. They can be lighter on their feet. They're not necessarily smack dab in a city. They've already had a lot of space on their campuses to be a little socially distant. Scripps College, a wonderful liberal arts college here in Southern California, they've created a world where if you decide, hey, I want to be at Scripps, but this fall may not be the right time, they're going to let you take classes at your local community college or wherever, and then bring them in with you as part, and you won't have to be a transfer student. So that's kind of unheard of in the past. It used to be if you've taken a single class, you're going to have to apply now as a transfer. And they're kind of opening themselves up.
Yeah. So I imagine that college-wise, as you're talking to, all these, your clients and the parents and the families, usually after they get in, right, the conversation has been done, where you're like, congratulations, yay, good luck on your next journey. How much has this conversation continued as people really try to, some of these are all good options considering what we're dealing with, but when you're talking about the money and the investment and the dreams that people are having, what's the reality of how much the struggle still continues right now with making this everything that they believed it could have been and should be?
Right. Well, it used to be, like you said, there used to be that traditional May 1st deadline by which students chose, this is where I'm going to go. And occasionally there were wait lists that they rolled off of, and it would be a top school. And if they got the aid package, they were good to go there. Now it's gotten so much more complex, schools. Just today I was reading, schools that have basically undenied students and then thrown a scholarship their way. So you literally move from being denied to, we're going to admit you. And by the way, here's $15,000 to entice you to perhaps come to our schools. So we're seeing behavior unlike what we've seen before. It's also worth noting that, students are in different boats. I've heard this phrase, like, we're all in the same boat. Well, we're not really. Like, we're maybe in the same storm, but it feels very different depending on which boat. Our international students, it's it's a case where many of them can't get visas. And even in South America, they started, scheduling visa dates, but now Brazil is completely banned, which is one of the largest providers
Mm-hmm.
of South American students to US universities. So there's just some constant whiplash going on. And so there are some students who are going to be in this through August. Most of the time wait lists wrap up late June, maybe early July, handful of schools. We're going to see a lot of schools in August still calculating down to 1, 2, 3 students. Like, let's pull them off the wait list. Let's see if we can grab them. Right.
Yeah.
That is not going to be unusual for that to just stretch on.
And do you think, though, that makes those kids being pulled off the wait list even more confused in terms of how you make that decision? And they're making decisions on a lot of unknowns. It used to be like, okay, I'm off the wait list, can I get
Yeah.
housing? And the
Right.
answer usually was, if we pull you off the wait list and you respond, sure,
Yep.
you're taking someone's housing spot. Now, I don't know what the best advice is for kids in this unknown world.
Well, the advice we've been focused on college-wise is, encouraging kids, letting yourself fall in love with one of these schools, the school that you commit to, by May 1st or June 1st, whatever the date might be. Let yourself fall in love with those schools. If you're still off the wait list or you get oddly undenied
Mm-hmm.
at a school, then you can consider it. But I think building your plans around one school is probably going to be the healthiest for most kids' minds, rather than trying to juggle a few options, simply because there are so many unknowns. But at the same time, I know students who are quite legitimately holding deposits at 2 different schools, a very expensive private and a more reasonable local public option. The parents are still trying to get a handle on their finances. Will mom get to go back to work? Will dad get a chance to get that expected pay raise he thought he was going to get? And that may make them turn around in August and go, yeah, we can't do the private. We're going to have to send you to the local options. So I think colleges and universities are also going to be adjusting in a way like they've never had to before. And I think the other thing that's worth mentioning, Claudine, is just the fact that revenue for these colleges is essential, separate from the budget cuts. Many of these schools, especially smaller regional publics and smaller private universities, are very tuition driven. They don't have the massive endowments or the state backing that, a Cal
Mm-hmm.
Berkeley or Stanford does. They need the tuition. They need those like full pay kids coming in at 50, 60, 75,000, at some of these
Yeah.
private schools. And if they don't get that money, they can't have those cafeteria workers, or they can't have that dance program or keep the lights on in the athletic facilities. So they are juggling a lot of factors here to make sure the money still keeps coming in.
Well, I think a lot of those universities have said too, like online is still the same cost, I think, because they're looking at numbers and they're arguing that they can't exist by cutting everything for everyone else. I'm wondering, though, I have seen some folks who say, because all the states are operating differently, saying whose kids were going to CSUs or are going to CSUs, saying, I wish I had applied out of state,
Mhm.
because I wish, and I wonder how much this is going to change patterns. Just like schools are looking at each other to learn, families of the graduates are being looked at by families of sophomores and juniors, saying, maybe these systems aren't as strong and as great as I thought they were going to be in terms of their ability to adapt. And maybe that means I'm going to look at elsewhere, even though that's not ever what I had planned to do. I mean, do you think this changes the way we look at this entire process moving forward?
Well, as a college counselor, I'm always encouraging kids to build a balanced list. And that balanced list, yes, it's often been framed around having those selective dream schools and then just solid targets, and then just some of what we call the likelies or the safeties. And I used to wrestle with a lot of families to get some of those safeties on, particularly financial safeties. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
everything goes south financially in your household, would you still be able to afford a college? And I think now I'm not having to make that same argument. People are like, I get it.
Yeah, I'm in.
The
I'm in.
world absolutely can change. we're also in a place, it's worth noting, I talked about those May 1st, June 1st deadlines. The vast majority of schools are still taking applications, these public universities. California, we're part of the Western Undergraduate Exchange. So if there's a student who's kind of looking at their local options and they're not particularly excited by them, you could still get an application into, University of New Mexico or Washington State or to the University of Utah and end up at some pretty wonderful universities, and likely with a little bit of aid money as well. So those options continue to be there for students, even
Do
if
you think
they
people are
feel
taking
jammed up.
advantage of those? I mean, do
I
you
think
think
there
there's
are
going to be?
some. Yeah, I think there are some. And these schools are pretty savvy. I live in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, and Arizona State University has a program, a cohort-based small college right in downtown Los Angeles. And they are continuing to admit students at the same cost of an in-state California experience. So, but here you
Yeah.
get to go to Arizona State School, and then you can do a seamless transfer when you're ready to actually go to the campus, in Arizona. So these schools are being pretty savvy. That revenue,
They also
necessity is the
have to
mother of
learn.
all of invention. They're being really creative. So those opportunities are there, and some of the more savvy families are figuring that out. And that's, one concern as a counselor is some of the kids who don't have access to great advice or an adult who can talk them through this might just kind of look at these sticker prices and go, yeah, I can't do it. And I hope for any who are listening in, they kind of realize like there's some options out there, and, get out there talking to your school counselor, get on the internet. You'll find some affordable options.
So there are some, the option is to also embrace the situation or look around, but don't feel trapped in either place, because you can do
Right.
some stuff about this. And I think that is the uncertainty. I think it's not going to be done by the summer. You're going to have the questions of, if you go back to fall online, will you get winter in person? I think unfortunately for these graduates,
Yeah.
it's not going to change.
Right. Well, and the other thing worth adding is, I think for some students, maybe even some parents, there becomes some doubt, like, is it all worth it? Like, do you have to go to oh my gosh, yes. If you look at the unemployment numbers, they're horrifying. But if you actually break them out and look at like where people who are college graduates, the unemployment rate is a fraction of those students who have some college or no college. That college continues to be the single most powerful way for in terms of social mobility, right? It's
And
the thing that can power people forward.
it's a 4-year experience. We have to remember that too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
there's time to hopefully recover. You won't recover all that has been lost, but you will recover a lot. And hopefully we'll think about that. And, and
yeah,
we learn from every experience we're in. And I imagine high school counselors are also scrambling to figure all this out too, as we try to navigate.
It's a fire hose. We've moved beyond it being a fire hose of information to just straight Niagara Falls of information every single day. We have an internal communication system at CollegeWise, and that thing lights up every few hours with, oh my goodness, can you believe this school has gone test optional, or can you believe this school has said they're going online? There's so much. The good thing is most students and parents don't need to follow every single one of those little pieces of information. They can kind of stay above the fray for the most part, because like I said.
Yeah. And I think now that some decisions are made, instead of looking at the University of Colorado, which just announced that they're doing cluster students in dorms and all of the, if you're not going to the University of Colorado, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You can let it go. They've been really innovative. Boulder.
They have a lot of different things they're looking at. And so it'll be interesting to see how we navigate the lessons that we learn from this. Lessons we didn't want to learn, but we are learning anyway. Yes. All right.
Unimaginable.
All right.
Yeah.
Kunasami from CollegeWise. Thanks so much for the chat, as these high school graduates learn many life lessons and prepare for what will be a great 4 years, even if it doesn't start out exactly like they have imagined.
They're going to do great. Thanks, Claudine.
Thank you. And thanks so much for joining us. And of course, you can look at more interviews always on coronavirusnow.com.